mod star tuning today. Our goal today is to show you an installation process for the 6.2, 6.5 diesel energy suspension polyurethane motor mount kit. There aren't many videos on this, so we figured we'd cover it quick today while we're working on our shop truck here. So our goal is to go from this factory mount, which you can see, we'll try to get it in focus here, is extremely worn out. This one has about 130,000 on it, and the rubber is all cracked and degrading. So our goal is to get from this to this with the energy suspension mount installed. In order to do that, the kit only comes with the insert. So we need to disassemble the factory mount by drilling out the rivets or welds. There's 3 of them in each, so there's 3 bolt holes. You can see where the bolts came out, 1, 2, 3. Those are what hold it in the truck. And for the assembly process on these, there's 2 pieces of metal, the mount in between sandwiched, and they're riveted or welded. So we just need to drill these out. We are going to do that with a 7/16 carbide bit. We're not going to use anything fancy here because we know a lot of you guys are just working on these as a hobby like we do. So we just want to drill those out. We'll show in the next segment of the video here. We'll pop out the rubber insert. We have one we already disassembled, so this is like a rubber insert out of a new mount. What we like to do on these things, instead of wasting time painting or anything, these motor mounts are pretty cheap, but when you buy them, they just come rubber again, which isn't heavy duty enough, especially for when we have more power than stock. So we just buy a new mount like this from your local retailer, Rock Auto or somewhere like that. And I think they're like, this was like $15 each or something like that. So they're pretty cheap. And we just disassemble these, so we're ahead of the game. You know, we're not taking the truck apart and having to spend an half hour, an hour, or whatever working on these. And we can have these ready to go. So that's what we did here. We drilled the rivets out, put the new mount in, used the wire ties to hold it together, so it's ready to install on the truck. And we'll move on to part 2 of the video here now to show you that process. You can see the orientation here, where the top of the mount either has to go this way or this way. Now for how to orient these things so that we get them installed the correct direction. If we take the factory mount, we can see that there's a high notch and a low notch. So if you're looking at it straight on, the left one here is higher and the right one is lower. If we look at the energy mount, we have the same situation. So the left one is lower and the right one is higher. So we can take factory mount, we can take the energy mount, and we can orient it to where we get the same situation, to where the left notch is higher and the right notch is lower. And that is how we want to put everything together. So we have these in the right orientation now. We have our new mount. We're gonna put the 2 halves back together because in this instance, I need to rotate the whole thing to match. I'm gonna take it back apart, double check my orientation here. I have the bumps on top, high notch on the left, low notch on the right, and I can put it together now. Take wire ties, cinch it down so you know you have it in the correct spot. Grab a couple more here. And as one mount, we can move on to the second one. and do the same exact process, and then we're ready to move on to installing these in the truck. So just cinch the wire ties down, and this one's ready again. We'll just double check it again, because I know this is the most confusing part of these things. Typically we have oriented the same way here. We have the high notch on the left and the low notch on the right, and again, this is just one of the mounts, say for the left side, and we have our other mount done, and we're ready to move on to the truck now. All right, now we're ready to look at how to install the motor mounts in the truck. So in this instance here, I already removed the bolts from driver's side, passenger side. It's 1, 2, 3 bolts here. 1, 2, 3 bolts here. Sorry for the focus there. Use a 15 millimeter on a 1/2 inch impact. Obviously it's a little bit easier since we have the motor out here. But you remove 3 bolts from each side. They do have nuts on the back. So we use a combination of a 15 millimeter box wrench and a 15 millimeter deep well 3/8 socket to hold the nut from the back side of these coming in from the rear and the bottom here. You can get in access to remove those if you have the diff out. It's super easy, but it's not real hard with the diff in either. You can see these are the bolts with the nuts here. Just left them there so you can see what you're dealing with. You can do this with the motor in the truck. You just have to jack the motor up a little bit. It is a little bit harder. We've done it on 2-wheel drive and 4-wheel drive trucks with the motor in the truck. The 2-wheel drive one will get real interesting on coming up with ways on how to hold those nuts, because you kind of have to snake up in there behind the control arm mounts. Definitely easier on a 4-wheel drive to do this job. So once you remove 3 bolts from each side, you're ready to take your old, crusty, broken motor mount out. Passenger side one's often worse because the motor torques towards the driver's side, so it gets real beat up. This one's trashed. Our fan actually hit the shroud and cracked on this truck, so that's why we're doing it. We can take the factory mount out, grab our nice shiny new polyurethane mount. Again, we're going to look at how we oriented these notches to make sure we're right. Here we have the high notch and the low notch because they sit at an angle here, and we're just reiterating to double check that, because you can get these things backwards. It's a lot easier when you're buying an assembled mount, but these do not come assembled, so you just need to double check your steps along the way. Now we can do the driver's side, grab our other assembly that we put together. Again, we can double check. We have a high notch, and a low notch. Matches up, so we can have a little mix up there. Put our new mount in. Definitely don't want to reuse the old one. Again, you can see the driver's side one's frequently in better condition, but it is still cracked and worn out also. Now, this is pretty much all she wrote. I'm not really going to film putting the bolts back in because that's pretty straightforward factory process, but you can see now we are ready to drop a motor in. If you have a clamshell, this is what bolts on the side of the engine on both sides. When you drop the motor in, it clamps down and sits into place. We can verify our notches are right because this is the correct angle. It just drop into place, and we will be ready to rock. Thanks for watching. Now that we've gotten 3 bolts on the driver's side here started, we can go ahead and just snip these wire ties off because we don't need them anymore. You see, because the bolt is cinching everything together. And we're ready to tighten those guys down and call it a day for this part of the install. I just wanted to finalize this video showing everything wrapped up. Got all 6 bolts tightened on each side. One thing we'll mention is it's real handy. You can get these at Harbor Freight or more professional line if you want, but this stubby 15 millimeter is awesome for holding up inside behind because it fits inside and doesn't hit anything, and you can hold them just enough that you can hit everything else with the impact gun. So it's a good tip for us. Help you wrap up this job as easily as possible.